Welcome to Study Loop.
In this problem, we're given several pieces of information, and the directions were to draw a diagram and then to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle CBD. Based off of the information that's here, I'll show how I would draw it. So it begins with perpendicular lines, that BD is perpendicular to AC, and that D is the midpoint of AC. And so that tells me right away that I should draw segment AC with D at the midpoint, forming a 90-degree angle because they're perpendicular, and it goes up to B. Okay. And so then the triangle that's formed is as shown here. Based off of the given information, we know that this forms a 90-degree angle. So both of these are 90 degrees. We also know that D is the midpoint of AC, which tells us that they are the length AC. That segment is split into two equal lengths, the length from A to D and D to C, or C to D, which tells us that those two parts of these triangles are congruent. We are also given in the information that AB, length AB here, is congruent to CB. And we're given that the segment BD bisects the angle ABC, which then tells us that this angle is congruent to this angle. So there's very little left for us to actually prove. There are two pieces of information that we need now that we've drawn an accurate diagram to show what we already know. The first is we have two pairs of sides that have been shown to be congruent for the corresponding parts. We're left with one side. And so the remaining side, BD, is a part of both of them, which means that it's automatically congruent to itself. BD is congruent to BD by reflexive property of congruence. And then we've already established the other lengths, but I'll put a note here that the reason why AD is congruent to CD is because of the definition of midpoint. So we have all three lengths. The next piece of information that we need to focus on is things related to angles. We know that angle ADB and CDB are both 90 degrees. So angle ADB is congruent to angle CDB because all right angles are congruent. And we know that they're congruent because of the perpendicular. Perpendicular gives us 90 degrees. Okay. We have also been given a bisected angle. And so angle ABD is congruent to angle CBD by definition of bisector. So the final piece of information that we need is the final angle A and angle C. Well, angle A is congruent to angle C by the third angles theorem. If you've already established that the first two angles are congruent to one another, automatically the third pair of corresponding angles have to be congruent because all triangles have a total measure of 180 degrees. So if the first two have already been established to be congruent to their corresponding parts, then the third angle has to be congruent to the third angle of the other triangle. And by definition of what it means to be congruent triangles, that all three corresponding sides are congruent and all three corresponding angles are congruent, we have now proven that this is true.